So by now it should be obvious to anybody paying attention that collectively, vehicle manufacturers around the world, and not just cars and trucks, but tractors, motorcycles, anything, they've collectively weaponized vehicles against us. You know, the hands-on little guy, basically tilting everything in favor of the dealer and the dealer's networks. We did a video a few weeks ago called Disposable Cars and the Evolving Transportation Crisis. We talked about a lot of things in that video, but the key part of it was the third tier buyer, right? So first tier, guy who buys car brand new. Second tier, well, after the first buyer trades it in at 3 or 4 years, the second tier goes to the dealer and buys this trade-in. And then that's it. These things are not supposed to last beyond that period of time. So you say, well, okay, it's no big deal. I'm into old cars. I do old cars. I do old cars. The newest thing I own is 25, well, newest car I own is 25 years old. It doesn't affect me. But it affects all of us in so many different ways. The trend as it exists, as it's moving forward, means that if you're anywhere in that basic transportation used car supply chain, so if you're an independent used car dealer or you're an independent mechanic shop, you're slowly being eliminated. The third tier buyer is the one that keeps all of us in business. It keeps the auto parts stores open, it keeps the independent shops open, it keeps the wheels turning. Collectively, the manufacturers have weaponized cars to the point that they're only serviceable through the dealer. And we've done countless videos about this. Proprietary software, proprietary hardware, cars that are built or systems that are built out of materials that are doomed to failure over X amount of time. Plastic tubing that runs snakes under the intake manifold and requires major disassembly to fix. Or it just carries coolant, and instead of using, let's say, a lightweight aluminum, they use a plastic, and the plastic only has a finite lifetime. So many examples of this. Wet belt oil pumps. We've done this. VIN-locked components. We did that video on the Demon 170, where just all the king's horses and all the king's men could not get this thing to function the way it was supposed to because none of the components were talking to each other. This is the future. This affects all of us. Now, this is doom. Right? No matter how you look at it, we're talking about eliminating a huge part of of the world's economy. How many people rely on the car market, the repairs, the mechanic shops, the body shops, the exhaust shops, name it, right? All the way down the line. Cars today are not designed to go that far. We're collectively in a lot of trouble. And these cars, or this situation, is something that we all pay for, even if we're not directly involved in it. Because when a car is mechanically totaled, and it's only, let's say, 6, 7 years old, somebody's paying for this. Mechanically totaled. So this is what got me thinking about this. I wanted to recap or get back to this topic. Yesterday, I've got to go to pull apart, pick up a couple of small things for one of my Jeeps. So as I'm walking through, I notice, well, this is something I've noticed a lot over the last several years. I've noticed that there are many vehicles in there that are beautiful, they're pristine, nice paint, nice body, nice interior. I mean, these things, if they weren't in the scrapyard, they could just as easily be on the front line of any used car dealer's lot as like a premium offering. Pretty cars. Now, I've been crawling junkyards since the 70s. I know what a car in a junkyard or scrapyard is supposed to look like, what the whole thing is supposed to feel like. Car doesn't end up in a scrapyard until the paint is shot. It's got dents, it's got rust, the interior is all wiped out. And then, let's say after the car's become very undesirable, it's out of style and it's cosmetically, it's rough. Something simple like a water pump or I don't know, a radiator, something like that, common repair, is enough to tip the edge and have the car end up in the scrapyard. So cars have always become mechanically totaled but only after the rest of it is shot. It was like a last resort. But in recent years, that's changed. And as I walk through these scrap yards, I see cars that are otherwise perfect. The waste is unbelievable. So I'm walking towards the section that I'm looking for. And out of the corner of my eye, on the floor, I see an engine. And it looks brand new. I'm facing the clutch side of it as I'm walking up to it. I'm like, that's brand new. You know, this thing has like no miles on it. What a shame. I guess it got totaled. Again, see, I'm not into the newer cars. I don't really pay very much attention. But this one caught my attention because, like I said, the condition of all the mechanical parts I'm seeing spread around the front of this thing are pristine. Like they just came off the assembly line. So I look at the car, and it's a Ford C-Max. Again, see, I'm not into the new cars. I do a little research afterwards. It was a hybrid crossover SUV mini thing. Okay, they were about $20,000-$30,000 new. This one was a 2018. So it's a 7-year-old car. But it didn't have 7 years worth of mileage on it. Like I said, I'm looking just at the patina of what's there, and it's beautiful. It's all like new stuff. And I look on the car, and I see no damage on the car. The paint is beautiful. It's shiny. There's no dents anywhere. The front of it is all ripped off, you know, to get the engine out, and the transmission is missing. A CVT, a hybrid CVT, which is its own separate craziness, right? That's missing, but everything else is there. So I'm saying maybe this thing got blasted in the front end, got totaled that way. Look at the frame rails. No, the frame rails are perfect. Everything was just unbolted neatly from it. Walk around the car, no dents, no rust, no craziness, no reason for this thing to like be in there. The interior, it's nice. The airbags hadn't been set off, so I know it wasn't a crazy impact. It's just mechanically totaled. Has a current market value, a book value of, I believe it was between $10,000 and $12,000. Something happened with this new car, relatively new car, that was so mechanically heinous that it was declared totaled because it would take more than, let's say, the $10,000 or $12,000 that the car's book value is to repair it. Something mechanically. The concept of a mechanically totaled car is new. Like it says, lots of cars ended up in the junkyard because they had a bad transmission, bad engine, or whatever. But they were there because the rest of the car had just deteriorated. It was used up. It was wore out. So now it goes to the junkyard. But to find brand new cars, shiny cars, and this one clearly had no mileage on it because I'm looking at the patina. You could tell when something's got miles. The underneath of the car was clean, not brand new. It didn't just come off the assembly line and go to the scrapyard, but it had maybe 15,000 miles on it or thereabouts. The parts on the engine were just spotless, beautiful, brand new. But here it is in a scrapyard, mechanically totaled. As I'm walking around, I'm seeing more and more of this. I'm seeing almost countless vehicles, all built in the last 15 years or so, 10, 15 years, that are straight. They're torn apart because people are harvesting parts. But you can see that they didn't end up there because they were, T-boned, or they front-ended, or rolled over, or in a flood. You could always tell like a flood car. No, none of that. These things were just mechanically totaled. The cost of repairing the cars outweighed its book value, and the thing got written off. Somebody's taken a hit on this, and that hit is always passed on to the rest of us that are just, basic insurance. Well, the insurance is covering a mechanically totaled car. Your premiums are going up. The waste involved. I have a thing about waste. I have a lot, but I don't have a lot because I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I have a lot because I don't waste anything. I'm very frugal. In that respect, I'm kind of like a conservationist. I'm like an environmentalist, but I'm not a greenie. And when you look at things like this, when you see new cars, clean cars, beautiful cars that are mechanically totaled for whatever reason, and there are a lot of reasons today to mechanically total a car, the waste, the environmental impact like I says, I'm not an environmentalist, but it's off the chain. This is how you know that the whole environmental thing, the carbon people and all that, this is how you know it's a grift. Because instead of focusing on getting every last molecule of carbon out of the exhaust, making the air that comes out of an engine cleaner than what goes into the engine, or fretting about a couple of drops of fuel during, the extra mile per gallon, right, here or there. Instead of focusing on those things, you would think they would be much more focused on cars that are beautiful, viable, clean cars that are mechanically totaled. The amount of energy, the carbon footprint that it takes to produce just one car. I know, I'm kind of rambling, we're going all over the map with this, but there's a lot to unpack in this whole thing. The amount of waste, the amount of energy required to produce a car is, and the carbon that goes with it, is unfathomable to the average person. So it's easy to get sucked into the whole, oh, we're doing this to save the environment. No, you're not. You're doing this because you're part of the gravy train that benefits from disposable cars. Piece of wire. Right? So let's say in this scrapyard that I was in yesterday, there was probably about 500 cars. How many thousands of miles of wire, tens of thousands of miles of wire, are incorporated in all of those cars? I'm talking about just the wires, right? Every wire has to start out with copper. The copper has to start out in a mine. So you've got a mining operation, and you've got all of the energy expended in mining that. And then you've got all of the people who have to drive to and from the mining operation, the collective carbon footprint of all of that. So then that ore has to go to a smelter, and now you've got another process that eats all kinds of energy, produces all sorts of carbon, that has all sorts of people that have to drive to and from, and they have offices and shops and facilities that need to be heated and cooled and lit, right? The electric bill for all of that. Then the copper has to be turned into wire. So it goes to another plant, and now the strands of wire are produced, and there's another facility that has to be heated and cooled, and the lights have to stay on, and there's all of the workers that have to drive to and from, right? Keep going, the insulation on it. What is it? It's rubber based, it's some offshoot of rubber, insulation's all different things, right? But the point is, each of the materials used for the insulation has to come from someplace, and there's another operation. Are you starting to get the point? Then you got to put it all together into the form of a wire, and it's yet another facility that has to be heated and cooled, and it goes on and on and on until it eventually ends up in the car. So it ends up in a wiring harness. Where the wiring harnesses are assembled, there's another place that has to be heated and cooled. And okay, so you get the general idea. The carbon footprint just in producing the wires that's in those cars that are sitting in the scrapyard is enormous, far greater than the collective emissions that those cars would have produced during the course of their lifetime. Remember, this is an ongoing process with the manufacturing of these things. Take that one example of a piece of wire and how much energy is into that, and then look at every single fastener, every nut, every bolt, every washer, every clamp, every clip, every zip tie, every little bit that makes up a car. Because you look at a car and you say, okay, well, there's a fender, there's a hood, there's a door, there's an engine, there's a transmission. You're looking at all the big parts. No, what about the tens of thousands of small parts that make up each one of those little components has to go through the same process as this. You see what I'm saying? You see where I'm going with this? That scrapyard with 500 cars in it has literally billions of little bits like this that all need to be manufactured, and there's the carbon footprint that goes with all that. I know I'm going way off on this energy thing, but just pointing out the fact that it's a scam, it's a grift. If these people were really concerned, they would be on the automakers. The governments, I'm very limited government, right? But as long as the government's involved in stuff, how about you get the government involved in doing something that's actually for the people, for the planet, and ensure by whatever means, whatever regulation, Fine the automakers for every car that becomes mechanically totaled before a certain amount of time. And you would see things turn around in a heartbeat. They'd start producing cars like they used to, that would go 15, 20, 25 years with just regular maintenance and the simple repair, belts and hoses and stuff like that, tires. You'd see things turn around real quick if they got fined $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 for every car that's mechanically totaled. I'm not talking about stuff that was totaled because of an accident or stuff that was totaled because of a flood, although cars can be made flood-proof if you really wanted to. That would be true environmentalism, not the nonsense that they peddle, these climate people. It's when you really look at it at the surface, you're like, and if you believe, right? Because there's some people who don't, and there's some people who do. And I'm not going to say which side of the fence that I'm on, whether or not we're actually affecting the climate. But if you believe that, then you're barking up the wrong tree. All of the greenies should be looking directly at the manufacturers and saying, why are you not building stuff that can last 20 or 25 years with basic maintenance? Right? And I know this is entirely possible because I drove to that scrapyard in a 25-year-old Jeep that has 100% of its original suspension components. It has its original transmission, it has its original engine, it has its original transmission, rear end, everything. It's all original. It's had water pumps and tune-ups and stuff like that. Of course, normal maintenance over the years. But it was a completely viable vehicle. 25 years old, 260,000 miles, still going strong. If the environmentalists were serious about this, that's what they would be forcing the manufacturers. That should be the goal, and eliminate all of the waste. I hate waste. I think most of us who work with our hands and build things, I think we all have that same basic outlook towards waste. I know, I just ran off on a bunch of different tangents here, but there's so much to cover, there's so much to unpack in this situation that we're in collectively. So it looks bad. Planned obsolescence started creeping in the 70s, and it's gotten more and more and more and more and more until now with this current generation. They have achieved it. They've achieved planned obsolescence. They've got appliances on wheels. Use it up and throw it away. Terrible situation. But I'm not a doom and gloomer. Because yes, I see where this is going to be an extremely difficult situation that collectively we're going to have to work through, especially if you're an independent used car dealer, an independent mechanic, an independent shop. You can see where the days of doing business as usual are getting shorter and shorter and shorter, right? They're numbered. But again, see, I'm not approaching this from a standpoint of doom. I'm approaching this from the standpoint of what are the opportunities? Because there's always going to be opportunities. Every crisis, every bad situation always presents an opportunity. So that's where my mind is focused. It's like, okay, they're building crap, they're building disposable stuff. The general public is getting screwed, and the people who really need basic, simple, third-hand transportation more than anything else, they're being completely erased from the picture here. So, but what are the opportunities? I don't know, but maybe you do. And that's why I think it's really important to do videos like this, to get the discussion going, to get the wheels turning. I'm not trying to revolutionize anything or start a cult. I just want everybody that can recognize the situation to recognize. Now, every time we do one of these videos, and we get a lot of comments on this type of video, because it's universal. This affects all of us. I always get the comments. That's why I will never buy a new car. The newest thing I'll ever own is a 2000 or a 2005, or the newest thing I'll ever buy is going to have a carburetor and points. These comments come up constantly, right? It's a common theme. And I want to agree with you. And as far as like my lifestyle goes, I do agree with you. I practice what I preach. Everything I own is old and serviceable. That's when I acquire a vehicle of any sort, serviceability is number one in my priority. So I want to agree with you, and in practice I do agree with you. But I hate to say it, because when you turn the general public against the manufacturers and you put a dent in their sales, you put a hurting on, it's the common guy like us that's working on the assembly lines that's not part of this. They're just doing their job. They're the ones that get hurt, because they're the ones that get laid off. They're the ones whose plant closes, and the town around them, that feeds them lunch and supplies them gas to go to and from work, they hurt. All of that hurts. It hurts families. It hurts the people. It hurts us collectively. Anything that puts a dent in blue-collar, grassroots America, what's left of it, hurts all of us. So that's why, I hate to get on the, screw new cars, screw all of this stuff. The hell with your manufacturers, let them all go out of business. No, because it's us that actually get hurt the most. These multinational corporations and vulture capitalist groups, they'll just find another way to milk the last dime out of whatever situation they can get involved in. And ultimately, boycotting new cars, or it hurts us. So that's why I try not to go to that extreme. But yeah, I practice what I preach. Everything around me is old and it's serviceable, and everything around me will definitely outlive me if I kind of keep up on it and it doesn't get totaled in the meantime. The manufacturers have weaponized our transportation against us in so many different ways. Now, what can we do about it? Individually, collectively, I don't know. The government? You guys listening? The ones who make regulations? Is there a possibility of actually forcing these companies to make the information, the right to repair, and then beyond that, actually preventing or fining manufacturers for cars, vehicles that become mechanically totaled? It's such an absurd concept. As a mechanic, somebody who's been doing this since the middle 1970s, the concept of a mechanically totaled vehicle where everything else on the car is nice is just, it's obscene. It's absolutely obscene. It pisses me off. It should piss you off too. Rant over. See you tomorrow.